This is DartPoints Podcast number 100 for Friday, August 18th, 2024. In this podcast, I'm accompanied by Brandon Nelson and Josh West from a company called Glean. Glean brings AI intelligence that is trained from your own enterprise data. All this and more in this DartPoints Podcast. And welcome to the DartPoints Podcast. And today is episode number 100. This is August 16th, 2024. I'm your host, William Sellers, doing it solo this time. And I think we've got a great podcast. It's Friday afternoon. It's 3 o'clock, kind of winding down the week. And we're going to do something a little different than what we normally do. Normally here at the DartPoints Podcast, we're talking about, data centers and cloud and disaster recovery and data protection, which are all great topics, cybersecurity. And we're going to continue to talk about those. But today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Yay! So on today's podcast, we have some new faces. Brandon Nelson, who I've known for years, actually used to be one of my old coworkers, as well as Josh West. And these guys are from a company called Glean. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, William. It's a pleasure to be here. Podcast number 100. That's awesome. I remember back when you started doing this, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
happy to be here and glad to get a chance to talk with you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the welcome, William.
Yeah, and Josh, I met you. Was it 2 weeks ago over at SQL Saturday here in Baton Rouge?
That's right.
Yep, absolutely. So we had a really good session there with you guys. I really enjoyed it. So today, let's talk about what you guys do over at Glean. Let's start off by kind of formally introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your current responsibilities at Glean and your background and how long have you been at the company?
Sure, I can kick us off. So I've been with Glean a little over 4 months now. I've been here in the South Louisiana area for the past 10 years. I've worked with a number of different technology vendors in the past. As you know, William, you and I have had a chance to work together several times. Before joining Glean, I was most recently at Matillion, so I spent a couple years there in the cloud data platform space working on ETL for the cloud. But before that, I was at Rubrik for about 5 years, which is where I got a chance to work the most with the folks in this territory, and also kind of where I got exposure to Arvind Jain, the founder of Glean. So super excited to be part of Glean. Love the tech, use it every day. Couldn't do my job without it, and can't say enough good things about it. So happy to talk about it today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited about it. I've discovered Veeam a couple months ago, and ever since I've kind of got a chance to look at it, I've been interested in the product. So, Josh, over to you.
Hey, Josh West. I'm a solutions engineer. I support Brandon technically and as part of a selling team. My history goes back all the way to the Marine Corps. I was in the service for 5 years or whatever, but got out of there, did the college, and then jumped into basically tech. I was really interested in hard math and whatnot. So I have experience in data science, NLP. I was a titled data scientist working fringely on data science things. Not quite the hardcore traditional data science, but hitting into a lot of chatbots, NLP, and those sorts of spaces, as well as knowledge management, which is what I was selling at Stack Overflow for a few years there, which gave me the understanding of the knowledge management problem and how people are looking to solve that.
Nice, absolutely.
Led me straight to Glean.
So so you're former Marine Corps?
Yep.
Wow. Now, did you do anything with tech in the Marine Corps, or was it just this is long ago?
Long ago. No, I was a grease monkey for helicopters. Not really relevant,
nice.
But
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for your service. All right. So let's talk a little bit about why we came here today. So, everyone talks about AI, and as us IT professionals, whether we like it or not, we're using artificial intelligence, right? And I know, speaking just for myself, things like ChatGPT, which is what I use mainly, is a great resource to help me do my job, right? It's kind of, I look at it as, it's not quite a search engine on steroids. It's more than that. But, we leverage these things, whether it's ChatGPT from OpenAI and now, of course, Grok from X.com, right? Just got a big upgrade this week. We're using these technologies to help us do our job, right? And maybe it's just for looking up quick facts that we need. Is X application compatible with Y application, right? Maybe I'm converting, gigabytes to terabytes or vice versa, or doing things like this. Or maybe I'm composing, some text for a marketing article or something like this. And I'm not quite happy with how that text that I wrote it. And I'm like, or maybe I'm having like a writer's block or something. And I'll ask a GPT, a chatbot an AI tool to actually give me some suggestions, right? And what I always tell someone, when they start using artificial intelligence, is check your facts. Don't rely on it completely, but sometimes it does give you, whether it's inspiration on writing an article in a certain way or some quick information that you just need, and then can maybe look at the reference documents. It just makes life a whole lot easier. However, usually these artificial intelligence tools are only trained in the things that they have access to, which is typically things on the internet, right? Real world scenarios, facts that maybe are available to everybody. And the thing that I'm really interested in when I first heard of Glean, right, is it brings the power of artificial intelligence, large language models, and so on, to your enterprise data. So now when I'm asking a question to an LLM and to an artificial intelligence tool, I'm actually able to get really useful data from my organization. Guys, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's exactly what excites me about Glean is, and give you a little background on Glean. The company was founded in 2019. Arvind Jain is our CEO and founder, but he had a background in Google search. He was one of the engineers who worked on Google search. So his whole focus and technical background and expertise is based around understanding data and search. And one of the things he encountered at Rubrik, and I was actually at Rubrik when this happened, as Rubrik was growing and they got more and more different data silos. You can think of just countless SaaS applications that are coming online, as well as, a lot of collaboration mediums and things like that. It became really difficult to get answers to do your job every day. You could literally spend 2 or 3 hours a day just looking for answers or trying to find the right person who has the answer, can steer you in the right direction. I think most of us probably have experienced this. So Arvind saw this and realized that that's a challenge that he knows how to solve. So he launched Glean as a focused on as enterprise search capability for the enterprise. Rubrik was one of the early customers. I got a chance to see it early on there. Really great the way you understand, index the data, build that knowledge graph around the data. And now you layer the LLM on top of it with the large language model flexibility and capability there. You can do some tremendously interesting things with your enterprise's data, your trusted data, so you don't have to worry about what weird data source did this get pulled from, because we're out pulling data off the internet, indexing off the internet. So that's really the power of Glean and why it's such a great tool, and I'm so excited to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Josh, these are things you probably deal with every day, right? When you're talking to customers.
Yeah. We use this tool like in real time while we're on calls with folks. I might even use it by the end of the podcast to like look something up if you ask me a hard question here, William. But yeah, it's like every single thing that we've done leading up to this point has been like something that attempted at an enterprise search, the intranets of the world that we've all used over the last 2 decades. Like there's data hacks you can do into those algorithms, but they are just algorithms, right? They aren't doing as good at personalization and like contextualizing this moment for you as an end user with specific identities. right? That stuff is just brand new because LLMs are creating this space for us to be able to integrate a search that fully.
Absolutely. So yeah, so Glean 1.0, really cool search engine that can tell you where your data is, where to go find your data. Glean 2.0, it'll actually know what's inside of your data, so you don't necessarily have to go search for a Word doc or a PDF or an article or a blog entry or a SharePoint site. It actually has the knowledge that it has trained itself on, and it'll just give you the data you're looking for.
That's often what happens. And a lot of it is like, depends how savvy you are at defining your own problem as to what you're going to get out of it. I mean, the reasoning engine is going to do a good job at picking up your specificity or your generality of your query, whether that be a statement, a demand, or a question. It's usually information seeking in some capacity. And it's kind of interesting to see it kind of reason through the information it finds and lets you go and like cites its sources, so you can go make sure like, hey, like, is that legit? Can I go look at the document and read the context around it? LLMs are growing in this capability with context window growth, of course, but it's definitely an exciting space to see grow from something that's working, and that it's just going to get basically richer from a context standpoint.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's incredible what you guys are doing with the SaaS model that you have with Glean. Do we want to bring up the PowerPoint so we can kind of look through some of the slides?
Yeah, happy to do that.
All right, guys. So anyone who's listening to the audio podcast, you probably will want to check us out on YouTube. That's where we're going to do this. You'll be able to actually look at the slides, but we'll talk through them as good as we can.
Cool. So I won't spend a lot of time on slides. Everybody gets their feel, but this kind of help visualize a little bit of the Glean journey here. This is just reiterating our story. Our three founders, where they came from, and then our top tier investors and some of the companies that are already leveraging Glean. We got some really interesting customer stories around what some of these organizations have done with Glean, and tremendous savings they've achieved in time and monetary savings through business efficiencies too. So I encourage everyone to check out the Glean customer story site and see some of those. Some of those are quite extensive and pretty interesting to dig into. One of the things I think everybody today is talking about AI. I mean, probably to an exhausting amount. In some cases, you hear AI everywhere you go. Literally every application vendor has an AI that, or is soon launching an AI for their application. The difference we see is most of those applications are focused on AI within the bounds of the application. It's just a LLM human language interface to do things within that application. It doesn't really extend beyond that. So that's leading some customers and enterprises to wonder, is that really what AI means for us? Where we have an AI that we have to ask these questions and use inside of each application. And of course, one of the questions could soon be, we got a question, we need to find some data. Which AI do we ask? We've got 10 of them. So we'll refer to that sometimes as siloed AI. So they're very vertical, and you can have AI sprawl, and there's a tax associated with that because each software usually has an upcharge for leveraging AI, and there's some pain with that too, just in being able to connect the dots there and see real value from it. The other thing we see is a lot of folks some of the larger organizations particularly are trying or have tried to build their own. And they quickly find that that's quite an undertaking. It's complex. It takes quite a good large engineering team, and then the value delivered is in question there, because a lot of the things that are missing there is they don't have a good grasp or understanding of the data for that AI. So that's really where Glean really focuses, is on the data, understanding how the data relates to you, how the data relates to your business. So that's really a couple of the differences in our approach. Is our goal is to be a general AI platform that can span across all of your different data sources and data silos.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, Brandon, that I really think is where the power comes in is, a lot of enterprises, whether they're small, medium, or even large, they want to use AI. They want to be able to use, LLMs and leverage this tool for their actual business. But to develop these tools in-house, it can be quite expensive. Whether if it's standing up physical servers or GPUs to actually handle the neural networks and computation, or just software engineering, right, to build your own. What really is interesting with Glean is you don't have to do that. You can leverage your tool, right? All of the AI backend for doing the knowledge management and knowledge gathering, and just point it at the data sets that you want to train the AI on. Let it train and then start using it. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and just you're thinking about, like, if you have all these different applications and they all have their different AI verticals and they can't talk to each other, if you built out an integration between every single application, you'd be dealing with an exponential amount of integrations. And this is linear in integration time because you just hook up each source once. So just from a mathematical standpoint on the amount of work, this is already an easier play to have a top level that takes in the data from these different sources as opposed to integrating them across each vertical.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard your CEO, Arvind, talk about it as the connective tissue between your enterprise apps, right? Whether if it's things like HubSpot or Zendesk, it's kind of the connective tissue that allows you to dip into all of those applications and gather knowledge without having to build anything from scratch.
Right. And those complex queries become things that you can actually do rather than giving it something and then it come up short in the amount of data it has.
Yeah. Very cool.
We are seeing also, just to call it out, we're seeing build and buy. People build, they might be training their own LLM or fine tuning it if they have the resources to do that for specific use cases. And that's great. But what they can't do is really build out an effective scaled out RAG solution. And that's where our foundations in enterprise search also meet that need, where it's like, I need to figure out how to put that data correctly on the scorecard for the LLM. And that's where Glean search and it being so relevant just makes this hum along much better than it would have otherwise.
That's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. And this slide represents, where we see AI going and where Glean is going in our journey here. First, AI has to get you the information. It's got to have a powerful search capability to find, your data, particularly your unstructured data, because that's the hardest thing to actually find and index and understand. And then also find your people, understand how that data relates to your people. From there, you've got the chatbot capabilities. You can quickly find answers just by typing in quick human language queries. You can summarize content, do in-depth analysis, exploration of the data that it surfaces. And then the next piece there, and this is where we're going, is AI that truly works for you, with the ability to create agents and AI apps, dedicated chatbot experiences for specific business use cases in customer needs. And that's really what's key here and where we see it going. And you think of it as a simple way to generate these things without having to take on that big undertaking of completely building your own. Absolutely.
Yeah, I find some of the use cases for Glean is amazing. Like, for instance, just the when I was thinking about this earlier, is like the internal knowledge graph, right? Where maybe you're a new employee of a company and you've done some onboarding with their HR, and those are how do I put my time in, and the normal things you have to do when you join a company. But when you start working inside of a large organization, or even for that matter, a small or medium-sized organization, you don't know who to go to necessarily when you're looking to solve a problem, right? Maybe you pointed in the right direction, but maybe not the best direction. And the thing I like about Glean is, if you don't know, maybe you're working on a problem, what the problem is, but with Glean, you can actually ask it, hey, who is the best person to help me solve this problem? And it'll actually look through the connected enterprise applications and maybe, you're looking for something on, how to set up a DNS server, right? And you'll maybe find a document, but it'll actually tell you who's the best person to help you solve that problem if you need to actually talk to a human being.
That's right. Yeah, this is like, you have a spectrum of success when you run a search in Glean. You could land on any one of those things, right? It's just a matter of saying, like, is my problem definable, and is there data to back an answer for that? Then you can scale it back to, well, what's the more general question? Then it's, well, who is the expert in this topic as a fallout? And it does a really good job of identifying, like, my PMs for specific functions and features that are coming out. I'm able to, like, quickly assess, like, who do I need to send a DM to, or like even talk to about, like, coming in on a call or something like that. Because sales side, we may need to have that extra competence on what's being built. So just pulling them in and understanding, like, they're here to sell with us too and build with us.
That's cool. So my chatbot will talk to your chatbot, and we just go do something else with our time. We can go, like, play tennis or something while the chatbots work and make us money, right?
we can go play some music like you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about chatbots, right? I mean, I would think, guys, that for people who are in support organizations, right, who, we've all dealt with chatbots. You go to a website of a software vendor or whatever, right? People creating dishwashers, right? Everyone's got the little chat bot that pops up. And the times that I've used that tool to look for information, it's more of an annoyance than it is value. And I've tried it. Like, I'll go to, like, a vendor website or even anything really, and the damn chat bot pops up, and it'll start asking me, how can I help you? And I'll ask a question, and within like a second or two, it'll come back and say, well, here's the support number. Why don't you just call and sit in the queue? And it's like, nope, that's not what I want to do. I would think something like Glean is much better at that, right? Actually giving you information that you really can use. Yeah,
I mean, that kind of goes into that story from T-Mobile. They brought in their customer support organization. I also did a year of support, so I'm pretty close to that. I also worked for a telco, so like, it is a big problem. And if you can move the needle literally just 1%, you'd win by millions of dollars. Like, the organization's costs are massive, and they, just thinking about typical metrics, you got average handle time and first contact resolution, if you will. And if you can assist in that, whether it be at the human level or a triage level or whatever, in any capacity, then you've got something on your hands that is real value for those organizations. And so, like, they were able to increase their first contact resolutions at least by, I think it was 30%. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon. But it's just a massive outcome. It means everybody's going to love the brand more, by far, because that's a customer satisfaction, proxy metric, if you will. You're going to impact it if you can do that more often.
Yeah, it's significant. And think about it. I also spent time in the support arena when I was newer in my career. And how many times does a customer call in with to open a support case? Is it truly a unique support case that's never been seen before? Most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, probably it's been seen before. Maybe it was 2-3 years ago by another support engineer who's long, left the team. But if you have the ability to leverage that knowledge, a lot of that time that's, referred to as tribal knowledge. But if that tribal knowledge has been recorded anywhere, even maybe in a collaboration platform like Slack, Glean can surface that answer for you very quickly. So you can think of how quick you can get the resolution to maybe some cryptic error code that a user's seeing, that's been seen before, and there is a solution, but nobody on the team today has seen it, and that's really the power of it.
Yeah. The power of really well-written chat bots are the end user doesn't know they're really chatting with a chat bot. That's where really it becomes spookily good. Absolutely. So this is all good information, guys, but how does this actually work? Let's look at, so say if, for instance, a company wants to adopt this technology, they'll come and purchase. Is it licensed per user, or let's talk a little bit about, like, how would a person get started if they want to either dip their toe in the water or completely jump into this product, right? Is it, as simple as creating a partnership with you guys over at Glean and then connecting into what applications are like the most popular and have direct integration?
Sure, that's great. A great question. In really what we do is we help you in a couple different ways. I'll answer the first question on the licensing. It's a simple per user license model. We're not charging for connectors or the amount of data sources or data being indexed, all those kind of things. It's really the number of users that are going to leverage Glean. So that's a very easy model to understand and for companies to roll out, and it can be rolled out in a very staged, focused use case by use case fashion, which is the best for the business in most cases. Secondly, some of the challenge there is connecting the data. You mentioned that. So we have over 100, and I think that's a growing number. There are more being added and worked on all the time. Connectors to a lot of typical data sources. Think of your SaaS applications like your Salesforce or ServiceNow or Zendesk, which you mentioned earlier, Slack, the M365 suite, the Google suite. I mean, all of those things are data silos, data sources, and being able to access, index, and understand and build a knowledge graph around that data is really where the key value is here. And because we have the connectors ready-made, it makes an easy lift to deploy Glean and get it up and running. We also have the ability to connect to some applications we don't have a connector for through an API connection process. And I don't know, Josh, you want to get into what that looks like a little?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'll first speak to the depth of connectors too, because there's different ideologies out there. It's like I've connected to it and I did a full crawl, right? I looked at every piece of data and I ingested it once. How often are you going to do that? What's your API key rate limits? Like that's a heavy lift every single time you do it. So you got to have the incremental crawls, and that's going to talk about the delta between what's changed since the last time I've crawled. You're still in batch mode when you're doing that. So then now you're looking at webhooks. How do I make this as real time as possible for the user? So if something changes, Glean knows about it as soon as possible. That is an optimization problem because it's got API limits. It's got rate limits. You can't just do a full crawl all the time. And then if you've got webhooks, they're lossy. So how do we reconcile that? All of that work is done behind the hood. Nobody has to code any of that for the native connectors. The depth of connector on a custom connector is something that you may have needed to have done before, or you're the techie, you're the savvy person in the room that's able to do this type of work. And then lastly, we've got partners that we can call in to do this work on behalf of our customers in a professional services type engagement, which may grow into other things.
Gotcha. So you can leverage other SaaS applications through APIs or direct integration. But what if I have an application that's running on-prem? Maybe I'm still running a legacy file server on premises, right? And I've got tons of like legacy old data that no one really looks at anymore, but yet there's a lot of information there that I don't want to lose. And maybe I need an Oracle to kind of be able to ask the questions that I don't want to go dig around. Is it possible for Glean to crawl on-premise things like file servers?
File servers would need to have, middleware written, but our endpoints will take it in. And a file server is a great example of just something that has both content and permissions. And that's enough for us to say, all right, we can index this and we can use it. And we know we're still in a permissions aware search, which is what we're built to be at the foundation.
See, that is just, looking at working in various organizations where, knowledge is key, right? And a lot of times we may have legacy, whether if it's, old statement of works or old documentation, a lot of that data is still useful. Maybe people don't want to go dig around through a file server tree. And I could just think, how useful would it be to basically, have that is something that is a data set that can be, that an AI is trained on. So I don't have to go search through folders and folders and folders and folders of documents, Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, right? And I can just ask the questions and get the information I really am looking for.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting story I heard just a while back in talking to a CIO of a good-sized university here in the South. And he stated that, he's inherited this, shared Google Drive of information that's been passed down from, I think, probably the previous 2 or 3 CIOs. And he inherited, like, here's all the documents, here's all this knowledge. It's yours to use, do your job. It's like there's over, 2 million files in there. Where do I start with that? So that's where a solution like Glean and the ability to understand that, index that, and it's like you said, it's very legacy in nature, but doesn't mean there's not valuable information in there. But
absolutely,
to manually go and go through that and source the value from it would be very daunting. So that's where Glean can really help you realize that value, instantly, near instantly.
So I would bet that Glean does a really brilliant job of looking through textual types of data sets, web pages, emails, files, things like this. Is it also able to handle things like image type data, like maybe Visio drawings or stuff like that? Or is it mainly the data types more text-based?
More text-based, but there are things that we index from images. So if you're looking at, like, say, a PDF or a table that's in an image format, we just handle it gracefully, ingest it as a table, and then we're able to kind of recall information from that representation of it. It's not bringing back the image for you, but it has the representation of it.
Okay, in Glean 3.0, I want to be able to ask it questions about my network diagrams and statement of work diagrams and have it give me information from Visio. That would be perfect.
Me too, but I think we'll have bigger problems if the AIs are able to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's amazingly interesting that we're at this point in technology that it's getting that far.
Absolutely.
Do we have any more slides we want to go through? Oh, cool. There we go.
Good representation of our platform. So, really, you can see at the bottom there. So flexibility is key. So I'll just start at the bottom. You can choose your cloud, how you want to deploy it. It can be, a full SaaS model, or you can host it yourself in your own cloud environment. So we call that a cloud prem kind of hosting. You choose your data sources, so it doesn't, go out and crawl all your data sources. You pick which ones you want to connect to, which ones you want to focus on. There's a long list of them, and like I said, it's a growing list. And from there, you can choose your LLM. You can leverage the LLM Glean is using currently, or your own, or if you're building your own, you can certainly leverage that as well. So LLM agnostic is key. And then the last piece there is being able to integrate with all the consumers of data, and that can be people from the business side to the technical side, product engineering. There's manufacturing use cases here. There's just almost a limitless number of use cases to help you bring this data and this knowledge to your user base to help them be more efficient and help your organization move quicker. And then building along those lines, you can also generate Glean apps. So think of these as focused chat bots for specific use cases like HR use cases. In my recent onboarding experience, I can say it was been one of the probably definitely the smoothest I've ever encountered, because day one I was told, if you need to know something, ask Glean. And Glean answers you correctly and has the answer, I would say 99% of the time when it comes to onboarding things. So, that whole wild goose chase scenario, I think we've all been on when we're new to an organization, trying to find the right person who knows the right thing and the most up-to-date thing maybe can take a week sometimes to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I did not experience that at all here with Glean. And that's because of the HR assistant chatbot. That's just one, such use case. There's numerous ones. And then, of course, integrating and building your own apps with Glean. It's RAG at the back end of that is the next piece there. So that's really what we mean when we talk about Glean being a true platform that can stretch across all your data and all your company's knowledge, and give you the flexibility there to leverage that and get the most value out of it.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's almost like Glean is a your superhero buddy at your work organization that's kind of behind your back, giving you giving you good information that you need to be more successful. So I see, on this image here, I see Outlook, I see Exchange, Teams, Slack. So let's talk a little bit about privacy. So if I'm tying this to an email system, or like things like Teams or Slack, can I ask it, questions like, what is my boss talking to the CEO about me for? What kind of privacy tool, what kind of, for a CIO, obviously there's certain things that maybe you don't want to have your general user population have visibility into. Let's talk a little bit about privacy from the standpoint of protecting the data from yourself, from people who don't need to be looking at whatever it's financial data or whatever internally, and then maybe talk a little bit about just the privacy aspect about working, as in a SaaS model, yeah, right, where your data is moving around, or maybe not your data, but the information about your data is moving around. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And so a couple things there. Well, where I think all of us would at times love to know what our boss is thinking and saying about us. We're not going to give you that information. So it's based on, it understands, again, that kind of gets back to the way we build our knowledge graph and understand not only the data, but how you relate to the data. We take into account and respect the permissions that's set on all that data. So it's not going to surface something you don't have access to. It's not a way to in-round, the security you've set in place. And as far as data that's pulled in from your different applications, it's also aware of the role that you have in that application. So, if you're pulling Salesforce data, you're not going to see data that's, at a CEO or a company leader level of access when you're just maybe a sales rep or an engineer or something like that. So it respects the security parameters you've set in place. Going beyond that just a bit is with the ability Glean has to really index and understand the data. We also have the ability to report on, sensitive data that is found maybe in areas that don't have the permissions they should. So while we're not a DLP solution where we're going to lock off access to that, Glean understands that and can report on it and help you be proactive to, correct a problem that maybe somebody dropped a file with, social security numbers and an open OneDrive, for instance. So that's the way we really address the security. It's really key to us, and that's at the forefront of any good data knowledge solution that Glean is. To help you understand and surface data quickly. You certainly don't want to surface data that you shouldn't be surfacing. So that's certainly where we start there.
Gotcha. So if I'm in, say, something like, so I have it tied to my email or my peer's email, I could ask it questions about, maybe something like, hey, what documents do I need to have done by the end of the week? Right. Exactly. And maybe it'll look through my emails and say, hey, you promised to get this person a statement of work or diagram done by the end of the week. You better hurry up. Or maybe for something that is more, time saving, I could say, hey, what's on Andy's calendar this week? Find me an open spot on Thursday to schedule this meeting. And since maybe I don't know what each calendar entry on, what specifically he's doing in those meeting times, maybe it'll give me suggestions on what times are open on a certain calendar, right? Or group of people, which, scheduling engineers is like herding cats. Something that would help do scheduling would be, I think, cool as well.
Yeah, it's going to understand what you have access to. And even when it comes to collaboration methods like Teams or Slack or something like that, the team channels, the group channels where collaboration is occurring, information's being shared, and you're a part of those, it understands that, and it can give you answers based on what's been shared there, which you can think that's really important in like a support engineering mode. But it's not going to share, what is in your boss's private Slacks or anything like that. So it's
Gotcha.
certainly permission aware, and it's really good at knowing. It knows what I've got on my calendar for the day. I launch Glean, and I see that right there. It knows if I owe somebody follow-ups, I can have it summarize and give you summaries to your boss on what you've done. I mean, under all that, because it understands what you've got going in your world.
Yeah. Contextual permissions, right? Where maybe as an engineer or a support person, you can gain information about things that are relevant to you. But if I'm a CFO or a CEO or CIO and I need to have more high-level privileged information, Glean can still pull information that's visible to you, index that information, and provide you knowledge on things that maybe would be different that a support person would ask questions on and get results on.
Yeah, it understands who you are. Certainly understands who I am as an account executive. It's not going to, provide me information from product engineering that maybe I shouldn't see.
What is Brandon's bonus going to be this quarter? Something like that would be cool. And then privacy, in terms of privacy just in general, right? When you're doing things, publicly. Your data is not necessarily being copied anywhere and stored outside of your organization, right? Your data is still your data, right? And you're adhering to the platform SLAs or agreements that you've already got in place with people like, Salesforce or Microsoft or Google, things like this. So it's not like your data is going out to a third location necessarily. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Yeah, we're not in the data movement business, so that's really not our focus at all. We're indexing the data and servicing these queries based on that index. A little bit about the different options, and we talked earlier about Glean could be set up in a cloud prem environment, so it lives in your own, the customer's dedicated cloud environment with dedicated connectivity to either on-premises data sources. So that is one way, and it's obviously completely in control of the customer at that point. And another way is a SaaS model, which we mentioned. But the difference with our SaaS model is it isn't a shared tenant SaaS model. It's a dedicated solution just for that customer that Glean sets up and hosts for them. So there is no shared tenant kind of architecture there. So that's the way we address that. And again, security is certainly foremost.
I will say that on the other side of this, there's a trade-off, right? Whenever you secure something, there's an operational hit sometimes where it's like, if I want this to be more secure, I need to sacrifice X, Y, and Z. But I want to call out that we deploy twice a week. And if we're hosted in your cloud, you still don't have to handle that because we have deployment engineers on staff that'll come in and take care of that for you. You don't have to be on a call for an hour as a package goes and updates in your instance. We've really taken a white glove approach to this to make sure that it's both secure and easy to use and turnkey for the user in the end.
That's really incredible. That's really the power of these knowledge management AIs that are gaining. Even things like, we talk about, AI from the standpoint of Apple intelligence, right? Even that's going to be making it into your phone in the next versions of iOS and iPhone, where, and I guess that's sort of like Apple's take on kind of what you guys are doing in terms of like having information about your personal life that is not leaving your phone, but you're still leveraging the power of AI to say, hey, you need to go pick up groceries or pick up, you're low on milk or something, go get it at the grocery store. Maybe that's Glean more like from a personal use case, but it's really that type of power where you're leveraging AI, but your data source that you're trained upon is still your data. It's still private to you. That's incredible.
Yeah. It may be even interesting to kind of hit on the knowledge graph a little bit harder here with that context is like Glean has the ability to ingest multiple data sources. So now you've got a profile here, here, and here, and here. Typically, you've got a unifying feature there that lets us see a complete picture. So when you think about authorship in one app versus authorship in another app. We could see that. We could see when you outbound link to somebody else's authorship. And like the relationships between documents and conversations all kind of builds into the knowledge graph's power for us to be able to build signals off of it to increase relevancy and the end result being a awesome search.
So I just noticed there's actually a Glean app for iOS.
Yeah,
And
use it all the time.
So tell me about this.
Same experience, just in the app like experience. So you can have your own, dedicated tile on your PC or on your phone. So it's the same experience as what we have as the browser extension. I like hitting my new tab and being at Glean right away. That's my personal preference. But the browser extensions are like one of those things where it's like that's where we get this third layer of data, being the activity data. It's not just people data, not just content data, but also activity data to build signals off of. So you visiting something doesn't just impact your query the next time. It impacts the people around you that work with you and that are working on projects concurrently. Like the idea of frequency being like you have frequent and recent activities going on, and putting all of that together in one like experience is just something that's really kind of powerful as far as the personalization goes amidst this very, very secure architecture.
That is really, really cool. That is really cool. So Glean will work as a, definitely indexing your data that's specific for your organization from your enterprise apps, but also it does function as just a general purpose AI, right? If I ask it a question about like, what's the weather going to be like on Wednesday or something like this, or convert gigabytes to terabytes or terabytes to petabytes, it can do that kind of stuff as well, right? It basically is like, something like a ChatGPT, but also for your company data, right? So it functions as just a general AI as well. Yes.
I'm not sure about the weather data, to be honest,
well,
because the integration would have to be there. But when I think about like pulling things from different places and having it be like the near real-time experience everyone's looking for, you've got access to the data in a RAG format first. That's kind of the default mode, is like you're in the enterprise context. We expect you to be there. But if you need to be creative, and that's typically when I flip the switch in my head, is like, oh, I should talk to the raw LLM, is when I'm ready to be creative and not focus on factual recall necessarily, but really get like a rough draft of something done, given a little bit of extra context. If I'm coding, just have the raw LLM. If I'm coding for my own context or something like that, like not necessarily something that's going to be attached to the big code base, but my own little script that I'm making for whatever purposes it might be. That's when It's like, just use the raw thing because it's good at these things, right? If you had a table and you're not connected to that table and you're like, I want to have these columns generate me some SQL, these LLMs can one shot that stuff. It's really easy. It's a great context to have, like, just
gotcha. So if I'm in Glean, So if I'm in Glean doing my normal, knowledge on my private data, but later on in the day, I'm like, I need to write a PowerShell script that does X, Y, Z. It can still come up with that information, correct?
Yeah, it can. And it just depends, like, have you written other similar PowerShell scripts in your context as to whether or not you'd want to have RAG on or off?
That is really cool.
It does have the ability to, in fact, if we get into the demo, you'll see there's a public knowledge source. If you want to point it at a specific website or something like that, you can't do that. It's just that's not what it's building the knowledge graph off of. It's using your enterprise data for that.
Fantastic. There's a demo. So why don't we take a look at that? I think this is something that I think I would definitely love to see. So let's go ahead and switch into demo mode here. And we'll take a look at it. I think this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
There we go.
All right. So you'll notice it's got a look and feel kind of like a Google landing page. Your single search bar experience. We've got some like intranet widgets that you have here, things that you've like recently seen or whatever, and you can summarize those assets as you go. Again, this is things I have access to. It's a signed in experience. This is my personal context, being Josh West, a solutions engineer who works at Glean. So, a simple search being like the product roadmap, of course. So we can show that I've got a pinned experience because somebody pinned those keywords. Just things that we've thought of as we went through the process of building search. We have Go links. That's also part of this. We have verification. That's also part of this. You actually get boosts in like relevance signals if you have it with the green check mark, right? Our head of product has reviewed our product roadmap in the last couple of days, seeing recent updates. And so like we've got, and it's a part of collections and et cetera, right? So like we can have a good amount of context here for that. You also see this like backup, like entry. The second entry isn't as relevant as this other entry for my personal context, and it's also penned. But we've got all the connectors here on the right from the different data sources. If I'm looking just at my G drive, there you go. If things have multiple versions, we have them stacking here, so we can detect that this looks like that, and it's really, really close as far as content goes. So let's stack it together, sort it by date, so you can be working on the recent one that's kicked off. The most recent version is usually the most relevant or whatever, right? So you've got a lot of power here just in the search side, and all you've seen today right now is just keyword search. This isn't even like thinking about it from any other like any LLM capacity. So you've got your facets up here, so you can filter. You got time, you got ownership, and other things like that you can filter on, as well as the data sources. But if I wanted to go a little deeper and show the assistant getting triggered, think like you have keyword search, you have semantic search, so you really have hybrid search. So when I have an NLP query and it looks like that, the LLM now is doing the job of really assessing like, hey, should I trigger semantic search or something like that? So let's expand this a little bit.
I'm sorry, my dog is shaking in the background, so just bear with it.
I was wondering if it was broken glass at the moment. Now I can hear it. It's the dog tags.
And then so kind of like while you're typing this, I see all the connectors. You can actually filter by what connectors you want to get relevance for. Like for instance, maybe if I just want to search things that are on GitHub, you can hit that and it'll actually just bring you results from GitHub. Or if you want to say, I want to know anything, or I want to know something about any of my connectors, it'll go and search and give you results from all of your connectors, not just specific ones that you want to look for.
That's right. Yeah. So every pill, and you could call that a pill if you're selecting it. So if I hit all, it changes the search results. If I hit G drive, that filters it immediately. Now, when I do an assistant trigger, I can do the same thing, but it needs to re-trigger the assistant because the context has changed. So here is the Google Drive version of that answer, where it's only looking at Google Drive context. And then if I hit all.
So it's giving you the assistant response. And the responses may be different based upon what pill you're actually having selected.
Yeah, actually. And well, it does re-trigger. However, sure. I'm having trouble getting it to do that right now. So my bad. But
yeah, no worries. No worries.
Yeah.
This is really, really cool. Yeah.
So, thinking about that, if I wanted to continue to have a conversation with this, I could type this in here and it would send me to, I could just tell it to keep going because it knows the previous chat. So, if I say what else, it's like, well, just continue talking about it, say more about that, right? So it's now put me into a chat session, and this is kind of what people are familiar with from a like Perplexity, ChatGPT, the external LLMs. They're all kind of like familiar with this experience. So the adoption is easy enough here without the search results being like the first thing you see, right? So in the first search, this was like what it was distilled to. So I didn't type this, right? This is a distillation of it. It read some things, and then it triggered the assistant to like, okay, well, let's talk about what I've snippetized, put on the scorecard, and generated for. And then let's go ahead and say, okay, now of what I've generated, how did that look compared to the documents that I read? And that's where it comes up with the The citations, so post-processing, we're able to label these like this piece of information came from X, Y, or Z different sources as we trigger.
So that's nice, because if you're, and one of the things I do when I'm using, even if I'm using something like ChatGPT and I'm asking a question, it'll give me answers, but then I'll typically kind of say, show me the source where you got this information. And it'll actually typically, in most cases, send me a URL to like a support document or a website that I can actually look directly at, like a vendor support document. This is doing the same thing, but it's actually returning back maybe a PDF or something that is in your sources, which I really like, because one of the things I'll say about any AI is trust it to a certain degree, but I wouldn't ask, certain information I'm going to double check.
That's right. Like the simple one that you've seen, all over the internet and definitely on LinkedIn is numbers, right? If you see an LLM print a number, it doesn't have numerical understanding, it has character understanding. So allowing it to do all of your math for you is probably something you should really check on.
Yeah.
Generating the code that works to be accurate with numbers is much more reliable than generating the math, like having it do the math inside of the LLM as part of the query. So, and just like think about like what kind of power you have here, right? Like I see this one bullet and it's related to that piece. This one doesn't have a citation. So where did it come from? And that's where I might start asking my questions, digging into the docs and say, well, okay, well, I need to take that with a grain of salt for sure, because it didn't look like anything else. It could be a perfect hybrid between all the data sources with a low score around all of them, and it's still correct, but it doesn't look like any of these documents here. So you should look as a human, right? And that's power right there. Honestly, that's a really great way to error out and say, like, it's time to be human in the loop. This is my job now going forward. I got my 80-20 and I'm accelerated. This may have been things that I couldn't have even done on my own with 25 different data sources, depending on the complexity of the query.
Very cool. That is so powerful. So I'm not going to ask Glean, I'm not going to be out on a walk and ask Glean, hey, should I eat this mushroom or not? I'm always going to check my data.
Might be risky.
What's that?
Said that might be risky.
Yeah, that's like any AI. Check your facts. But yeah, this is really incredible, guys. This has been a really interesting and enlightening podcast about what you guys do over at Glean. That's really cool.
Just to call out this is hitting the raw LLM with public knowledge being our branding for that. Like the raw experience is just, you hit new chat and you're doing RAG essentially. The public knowledge, I need to be creative. I need to draft something. Here's my problem. So I, generate a simple bottom tested loop in Java. And, I can be a little bit flexible here. I don't have to spell everything correctly. I don't even have to punctuate it correctly. But I ask it for something and it does its creative job. And I get something here, right? Well, now I can say, well, can you transform that? Top tested loop. And like this creativity, this iteration, you think about it in your own context where it's like, I saw some code, I rejected some part of it, and then I ask it for an adjustment. That is the new easy development for scripting. Yeah. It's like just getting it, and when you ask it to explain or be a mentor about it, it's actually really good at pointing out, oh, I changed this to that, this to this, and here's why. And if you're a junior coder, this is just gasoline on the fire.
God, I wish I had this when I was back in college. I would be so much better. But this is incredible, guys. I mean, this is really, I think, AI and things like chatbots or ChatGPT type stuff has been, revolutionary on how we teach ourselves, use data, and understand the world, right? This brings it to another level because now it brings personal data or company data, right, things that aren't just generally accessible on the web. This brings that information even more rich or more valuable to its users, right? This is like a magnitude, ChatGPT and AI is fantastic, and it brings you up to here, right? Well, something like this where you're actually training AI on personal data or company type data, it brings it even just to a bigger level. I could just see it's so much more useful now, where I can decide to train something like Glean on my personal data sets and leverage the ability to just exponentially gather more value from my own data.
Yeah, like I said, this is something that Josh and I use to do our jobs every day. Josh gave some pretty examples of, engineering, code development. I pretty often get into pretty technical topics, and being a sales rep, I'll ask it to explain it to me like I was 5, and it'll give me a really nice, simple breakdown that even I can grasp and share with customers. So,
one of the things we have to remember is where did the AI get trained? And the ones that we're working with still today have the entire corpus of Reddit, and explain it like I'm 5 is very popular. And so you can bring explain it like I'm 5 into your company context because it was trained on Reddit data. It will flavor it like you're 5 and talk about Legos while it's explaining technical topics to you. It's actually very profound in how it can simplify some of these talk tracks into very simple analogies that other people will understand, even in a business context.
Yeah, that's incredible. Being able to know how to ask the correct questions or prompts. They actually have something called a prompt engineer, right? Who basically is trained on how the best way to ask, artificial intelligence, the questions to get the information that they need. That's just incredible.
Yeah. And honestly, this is like the skill, right? I mean, this is the skill moving forward, to be able to automate in a new way, create a new experience. First, it starts with defining your own problem, but then there's techniques that you flavor those prompts with. Like, you are and then you just pick the persona you need it to act like. You are a marketing manager. You are like a field marketing person building an event. What's an agenda? Like, you could have all of these different tools at your capacity because it's trained on so much data. It knows so many different personas and how they think that it can distill a rough draft for you in a heartbeat. And it's like, if you're on the front line selling and you need to come up with an event really quickly, or what have you, this is something you can do. You got the power to do it, and you don't even have to critically think that hard beyond defining the problem.
Yeah, you have to know what you want to do and what direction you're going. This just is a tool to help you get there faster, more efficient, get more work done.
Yeah, and if you talk to managers about defining your problem before you start work, it's one thing they really want you to do. So it's actually, it's helping train the entire workforce that, we're not going to go make a mistake in that direction or move too fast without saying exactly what we need first.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been a great podcast. We're a little over an hour, which, prior to I tell this to all of our guests, is like, if we can get 30 minutes, we're good. And literally, I think most all podcasts that we've done, we've never had a podcast that's like under 45 minutes. We typically will run, at least 45 minutes. Typically we go an hour. And I guarantee you, if we continue on, we could probably do another half hour of talking about this. So this is really good information. But if anyone is interested, in the show notes, I'm going to definitely leave, if it's okay to leave you guys email addresses, in case any of our listeners want, more information. They can reach out to you, Brandon, and then go through, Josh as well. Really great information.
Yeah, appreciate you having us. Enjoyed the conversation. Happy to, if you want to have another one of these later, we can always go a little deeper. Really, this is something that we can talk about all day long because it's so interesting. There's so many possibilities here. So. Yes, please feel free to reach out with any questions. Happy to help you guys.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon and Josh, thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you having us.
All right, guys, as always, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DartPoints. We have a playlist just for our podcast. And also, if you wanting to listen to the audio, that is absolutely available. It's where any fine podcast can be found, on Apple, Spotify. If you're on Google, it's listed under Google Podcasts. So anywhere you consume your podcasts will be there. Just search for DartPoints. So until the next one, guys, thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.